She walked into a restaurant full of vampires and begged the most dangerous one to save her. And when her cop husband burst through the door 30 seconds later, the Vampire King stood up and said 2 words that made the entire room go silent. "She's mine." If you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening from right now. Blood tasted like copper and fear. Sarah Webb knew this intimately because she'd been tasting her own for the last 3 hours, split lip courtesy of her husband's wedding ring. The rain hammered down on 5th Street as she stumbled past closed storefronts, her white waitress uniform clinging to her skin like a second layer of shame. Most places were dark at 2 a.m, but ahead, warm amber light spilled from a restaurant she'd never noticed before. Nocturne. Sarah didn't care that she'd never seen it open during her day shifts at the diner 2 blocks over. She didn't care that the windows were tinted black, or that expensive cars lined the street despite the ungodly hour. She only cared that Marcus was 30 seconds behind her, and the door was unlocked. The moment she crossed the threshold, silence swallowed the storm. The restaurant was impossibly full for a Monday night in a city where most people were asleep. Men and women in expensive suits and designer dresses sat at candle-lit tables, their conversations hushed, their movements too smooth, too graceful. The air smelled like wine and something else, something old and metallic that made Sarah's survival instincts scream. But louder than instinct was the sound of Marcus's police radio crackling outside. A hostess appeared, pale skin, dark eyes that reflected the candlelight like a cat's. "Ma'am, we're a private establishment, reservation only. Please," Sarah whispered, water dripping onto the polished floor. "I just need—" The door exploded open behind her. Marcus filled the doorway, 6'3" of rage stuffed into a police uniform. His badge caught the light. So did the gun on his hip, his hand hovering near it. "Sarah, get your ass out here. Now." Every head in the restaurant turned, not toward Marcus, but toward the back corner where a single man sat alone at a table draped in black cloth. Sarah followed their gaze. He was the kind of handsome that didn't look real. Sharp cheekbones, black hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. He wore a 3-piece suit that probably cost more than her car, and he held a wine glass filled with something too dark to be Cabernet. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Pale gray, ancient, and currently fixed on her husband with the mild interest of a predator watching prey. "I said now, Sarah." Marcus's voice cracked through the quiet. She had 2 choices. Go back to Marcus and whatever he'd do to her in private, away from witnesses. Or, Sarah's legs moved before her brain caught up. She walked straight past the frozen hostess, past tables where impossibly beautiful people watched with hungry eyes, and stopped at the black draped table. The man slowly lowered his wine glass. Up close, he was even more unsettling. His skin was too perfect. No pores, no imperfections. His stillness was absolute. But when he looked at her, really looked at her, something flickered in those gray eyes. Curiosity. Sarah slid into the chair beside him, her wet uniform squeaking against the leather. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. But in the deadly silent room, everyone heard, "Please hide me." For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the man smiled. It was the kind of smile that made Sarah think of wolves in winter and things that went bump in the night. He rose from his chair with liquid grace, every eye in the room tracking his movement. "Officer." His voice was smooth as aged whiskey with an accent she couldn't place. British, but older. "I believe you're causing a disturbance." Marcus's face went purple. "That's my wife. She's confused. Probably drunk. She's sitting at my table." The man's tone didn't rise, but somehow it filled every corner of the restaurant, of her own free will, which makes her my guest. "I don't give a damn whose guest she is. I invoke sanctuary." The room exploded with whispers. The hostess actually gasped. Marcus froze. "What did you just—" "The Sanctuary Pact. Ancient law, older than your badge, officer." The man's hand rested lightly on the back of Sarah's chair. "This woman has requested my protection, and I have granted it. She is now under my ward." His smile sharpened. "My name is Lucienne Vale, and this is my domain." Sarah felt the shift in the air like static electricity before a lightning strike. Marcus felt it too. His hand dropped away from his gun, confusion and something else, fear, crossing his face. "You can't," Marcus started. "I can. I have." Lucian gestured to the room. "The pact is witnessed." Every single person raised their glass in silent acknowledgement. "She's mine now." The way Lucian said mine sent ice down Sarah's spine. But it was a different kind of cold than Marcus's fists. This was the cold of a locked vault, of something unbreakable. Marcus's jaw worked, his eyes darting around the room, seeing something Sarah couldn't quite grasp. Finally, his gaze landed back on her, and the hatred there was pure. "This isn't over, Sarah. Not by a long shot." He turned and stormed out, the door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle the windows. The moment he was gone, the restaurant exhaled. Conversations resumed. Someone laughed. But Sarah couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because Lucian Vale was still standing beside her, and she was starting to understand what kind of restaurant this really was. What kind of people filled it. What she'd just become. Lucian sat back down, picked up his wine glass, and studied her with those ancient gray eyes. "Well then," he said softly. "That was unexpected." He tilted his head. "Tell me, little ward, do you have any idea what you've just done?" Sarah's voice shook. "I asked for help." "No." His smile returned, sharp and knowing. "You asked a vampire king to protect you from your husband. There's a difference." The room tilted. Vampire king. And he'd just called her his. By 4 a.m, Sarah sat in Lucian's private office above the restaurant, wrapped in a borrowed cashmere blanket that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She watched him make phone calls in a language that sounded like Latin mixed with something darker. His voice never rose above conversational, but the tension in his shoulders told her everything. She'd broken something. Something big. A woman appeared in the doorway without a sound. Red hair, dressed in black tactical gear, eyes that same reflective quality Sarah had seen in everyone at the restaurant. "Let me guess," the woman said. "Cassandra's throwing a tantrum?" "Cassandra says I violated the Treaty of 1847. Lucian set down his phone with careful precision. "Apparently, granting sanctuary to a human without council approval is grounds for challenge. Since when does the Vampire King need council approval for anything?" The woman's gaze slid to Sarah. "No offense, honey, but you've started a political nightmare." "Elena." Lucian's voice held a warning. "What?" "It's true." Sarah's hands trembled. "I don't understand. What's happening?" Lucian turned to face her fully, and for the first time since the restaurant, she saw genuine concern in his eyes. "Sanctuary is an ancient law among my kind. When you asked for my protection, and I granted it, we became bound. You are now under my ward, which means any threat to you is a threat to me. But that's good, right?" Sarah whispered. "In theory." Elena crossed her arms. "In practice, it means every vampire faction in the Eastern Territory now has an opinion about you. And your husband," she pulled out her phone, swiping to a news article, "has already gone to the media." The headline made Sarah's stomach drop. "Local cop's wife missing. Husband claims cult involvement." There was Marcus on screen, tears streaming down his face, looking like a grieving husband instead of the man who'd put her in the hospital twice. "He's good," Elena muttered. "I'll give him that." Another phone buzzed. Lucian checked it, his expression darkening. "It seems Officer Marcus Webb has filed an official missing persons report. You're now a kidnapping victim, Sarah. He's given statements to 3 news stations and contacted the FBI." "He's what?" Sarah shot to her feet. "I'm right here. I left on my own." "Doesn't matter," Elena said. "He's got a badge and a sob story. You're his abused wife who was manipulated by a dangerous cult leader." She glanced at Lucien. "That would be you." Lucien's jaw tightened. "Your husband isn't just an abusive cop, Sarah. He has ties to hunter organizations, old families who've been killing my kind for generations. We've had a truce, shaky but functional." His gray eyes locked onto hers. "Your sanctuary complicates that." The weight of what she'd done crashed down on her. She'd walked into a restaurant full of vampires and asked their king for help. And now 2 worlds were colliding because of her. "What happens now?" she whispered. Lucienne moved toward her, stopping just close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his skin. "Now, we prepare for war, because Marcus Webb just declared it." The underground court was nothing like Sarah imagined. No coffins, no cobwebs, just a massive chamber carved from bedrock beneath the city, lit by chandeliers that cast everything in amber light. Marble columns stretched toward a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of battles between creatures with wings and fangs, humans cowering below. Lucienne led her down a staircase that seemed to go on forever, Elena flanking her other side. She'd been given clothes, a simple black dress that fit perfectly despite no one measuring her. Another unsettling thing in a growing list. "Keep your eyes down," Elena whispered. "Don't speak unless directly addressed. Don't accept food or drink from anyone but Lucian. And whatever you do, don't look them in the eye for more than 3 seconds. Why not? Because some of them will try to compel you. Force their will into your mind." Elena's expression was grim. Lucien's protection only goes so far. Inside your head, you're on your own. The staircase opened into the chamber. Sarah's breath caught. 50 vampires stood in a semicircle around a raised dais, wearing everything from modern suits to what looked like Renaissance clothing. Their ages ranged from teenagers to elderly, but all shared that same predatory stillness, all watching her. A woman stepped forward, tall, dark-skinned, wearing a gold dress that seemed to shimmer. Her presence commanded attention the same way Lucian's did. Power. "Lucian Vale," her voice echoed through the chamber. "You invoke your right to sanctuary without council consultation. You bring a mortal into sacred ground. Explain yourself." "Lady Cassandra." Lucien's tone was respectful but firm. "The Sanctuary Pact predates the Council by 6 centuries. It requires no permission, only witnesses. The pact was designed for our kind," a blonde vampire with a British accent shouted. "Not for mortal playthings." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. "Sarah Webb invoked sanctuary under threat of imminent harm," Lucian said. "The law is clear. Then let us understand what we're protecting." Cassandra moved directly in front of Sarah, close enough that Sarah could see her pupils were slightly slit like a cat's. "Tell me, child, why did you choose to sit at a vampire's table?" Sarah's mouth went dry. "I didn't know what he was. I just needed help." Ignorance as defense. How quaint. Cassandra tilted her head. "Look at me." Sarah's eyes met the vampire's against her better judgment. It felt like hooks sinking into her brain. Cassandra's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "You will tell me your true intentions. You will reveal what you're hiding. You will—" The pressure shattered like glass. Cassandra stumbled backward, shock flashing across her face. The entire chamber went silent. "What?" Cassandra's hand went to her temple. "What did you just do?" "Nothing." Sarah's heart hammered. "I didn't do anything." Another vampire stepped forward, silver-haired, the same one from Lucian's office earlier. "My turn." Before anyone could stop him, his eyes locked onto Sarah's. Again, that invading presence, like someone trying to shove their hand into her thoughts. And just like before, something in her blood pushed back. Hard. The silver-haired vampire gasped, blood trickling from his nose. "Impossible," someone whispered. "She's resisting compulsion," another breathed. "No human resists compulsion. Not without training. Not without— the bloodline," Cassandra finished, her shock transforming into something calculating. "She's from the old blood." The chamber erupted. Vampires surged forward, their composed masks dropping. Sarah pressed back against Lucian, who positioned himself between her and the crowd like a shield. "Enough!" His voice carried power that made the chandeliers shake. The vampires froze. "She is under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me." "Lucian, you can't possibly understand what you have here," Cassandra said, though her eyes gleamed with ambition. "The old blood hasn't walked among mortals for 3 centuries. Do you know what her blood could do? 1 drop could cure blood madness, could strengthen weak lines, could make her a target for every vampire on the eastern seaboard," Lucian finished coldly. "Which is precisely why this information doesn't leave this chamber. You can't protect her forever," Cassandra said softly. Word will spread. She's not just a waitress anymore, Lucian. She's a prize, and everyone in this room knows it. The footage was grainy, shot from a security camera across a parking lot. But even through the poor quality, Sarah could see Marcus clearly. He stood beside his police cruiser at dawn, talking to a man in an expensive suit. The man was tall, blonde, and even through the screen, Sarah could tell he wasn't entirely human. His movements were too fluid, too graceful. "That's Victor Blackwood," Elena said quietly, freezing the frame. "Second in command of the Blackwood clan. One of the oldest vampires in North America. They were in Lucian's safe house, a penthouse apartment with blackout curtains and security that would make the Secret Service jealous." Lucian stood by the window, his back to them, tension radiating from every line of his body. "What are they discussing?" Sarah asked. "We had a lip reader analyze it." Elena's expression darkened. "Your husband is making a deal. He's offering Victor something very valuable in exchange for help undermining Lucian's authority. What could Marcus possibly offer a vampire?" Lucian turned from the window, his gray eyes hard as stone. "You, Sarah. He's offering you. Specifically your blood." The room tilted. "But I'm under sanctuary, which is why they're planning something else." Elena pulled up another file. "The Blackwood clan has petitioned for a formal challenge. It's an ancient law. If they can prove Lucian violated protocol by granting you sanctuary, they can challenge his right to rule. If Lucian loses, sanctuary breaks, and you become disputed property." "Disputed property?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Meaning you'd go to the victor," Lucian said flatly. "In this case, Victor Blackwood. He'd have legal claim to you under vampire law. Your blood would strengthen his entire clan for generations." Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We can end this quietly, Sarah. Come home now, and I'll make sure no one gets hurt. Refuse, and blood will be on your hands. M." She showed it to Elena, who swore under her breath. "He's threatening an attack." Before anyone could respond, Lucian's phone rang. He answered, listened for 3 seconds. Then his face went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that reminded Sarah he wasn't human. "When?" he said quietly. Elena's phone rang next. She answered, and Sarah watched all color drain from her face. "No." "How many?" Lucian hung up first. When he looked at Sarah, his eyes had shifted to pure silver. "Marcus gave hunters the location of one of my properties. 3 of my people were inside, sleeping during daylight. They're dead," Elena whispered, lowering her phone. "Staked while they couldn't defend themselves." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Sarah had never seen Lucian truly angry before. Now she understood why vampires had ruled the night for millennia. Power rolled off him in waves. Ancient. Terrible. Absolute. "He murdered them," Lucian said, his voice deadly calm. "Your husband led hunters to a safe house and murdered 3 vampires in their sleep." "I didn't know," Sarah breathed. "I swear I didn't." "I know." Lucian moved toward her, and despite his rage, his hand was gentle when it touched her shoulder. "This isn't your fault, but it changes everything. The Blackwood challenge is in 3 nights, Elena said. But after this, after Marcus proved he'll kill vampires to get her back, every clan will be watching. They'll want blood for blood. Then they'll have it." Lucian's smile was sharp as broken glass. "But not the blood they're expecting." Another phone call, this time from an unlisted number. Lucian put it on speaker. Lucian Vale. The voice was smooth, cultured, with a faint European accent. "Victor Blackwood. I trust you've heard about the unfortunate incident at your property. Such a tragedy when vampires are caught unaware during daylight. Almost as tragic as sheltering a human with hunter connections." "You armed them," Lucian said coldly. "You told Marcus where my people slept. I simply shared information with a concerned husband." Victor's tone was poisonous honey. "A husband who's offered me something very interesting in exchange. The challenge stands, Lucian. 3 nights. Traditional terms. And when I win, the girl becomes Blackwood property. Her old blood will serve a better purpose than protecting your pride, if you win. When I win, you've grown soft, old friend. Sanctuary for a human? You've already lost." The line went dead. Sarah's hands shook. 3 of your people are dead because of me. 3 of my people are dead because Marcus Webb is a monster," Lucian corrected. "And because Victor Blackwood wants power." He met her eyes. "But I made you a promise when I invoked Sanctuary. I don't break my promises, even if it costs you everything." Even then, the emergency council meeting happened at midnight, in the same underground chamber. But this time, the atmosphere was pure poison. 50 vampires stood divided. Literally. Half the room clustered on one side, the other half opposite, with Lucian at the center and Sarah standing beside him. 3 of our kind are dead," a vampire with a French accent spat. "Slaughtered in their sleep because of her. Marcus Webb acted with Hunter support," Lucian said firmly. "This isn't Sarah's fault." "Isn't it?" A platinum-haired woman stepped forward. "Before she walked through your door, we had peace. Uneasy, but functional. Now we have FBI investigations, Hunter raids, and a challenge that could cost you everything." Cassandra stood on the left side of the room, arms crossed, watching. She hadn't spoken yet, which somehow made her more threatening. "The girl stays," Elena said. "Sanctuary law is absolute. Sanctuary law was written for our kind." The French vampire, Pierre, Sarah remembered, shot back. "Not for mortals with Hunter husbands and convenient old blood. This is a trap." "You think I orchestrated this?" Sarah's voice cracked. "You think I wanted any of this?" "I think," Pierre moved closer, "you're either incredibly stupid or incredibly clever. And I don't believe stupidity coincides with old blood lineage." The debate raged on. Vampires shouted about revoking Sanctuary, about using her blood, about the danger she represented. Sarah stood frozen, listening to immortal beings debate her life like she was furniture. Then she noticed something. Pierre kept glancing at his phone. Quick, subtle checks that most wouldn't catch. But Sarah had spent 3 years reading Marcus's moods, learning when he was hiding something. And Pierre had that same tell, the same nervous energy. "You've been texting someone," Sarah said loudly. The room went quiet. Pierre's eyes snapped to her. "Excuse me? Your phone. You've checked it 6 times in the last 10 minutes. Sarah's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "Who are you talking to? How dare you? Show us your phone," Lucian said softly, his tone deadly. Pierre's face went carefully blank. "This is absurd. I don't answer to a mortal. You answer to me." Lucian moved forward. "Your phone, now. I have a right to privacy." Elena moved faster than Sarah could track, snatching the phone from Pierre's jacket. She swiped through it, her expression darkening. "Oh, you backstabbing son of a... What is it?" Cassandra demanded. Elena turned the phone around. On the screen was a text thread with an unknown number, but the messages were clear. "Meeting still on for tomorrow night?" "Yes." Lucian's distracted. "The girl will be easy to take. Blackwood will honor our agreement. You'll have territory once Veil falls." The chamber erupted. Vampires lunged for Pierre, but others held them back. Pierre laughed, cold and bitter. "You're all fools. Lucienne is finished. The challenge is a formality. Blackwood has already won." His eyes fixed on Sarah with pure venom. "And you, little mortal, will be Victor's personal blood supply for the next century. He's already promised me a taste." Lucian moved like lightning. One moment he was across the room. The next his hand was around Pierre's throat, lifting him off the ground. "How many others?" "Enough," Pierre choked out. "Enough to know your precious sanctuary is a joke. Let me be very clear." Lucian's voice was death itself. "Anyone who sides with Blackwood forfeits their life. Anyone who touches her forfeits worse." He released Pierre, who collapsed gasping. "Get him out of my sight." 2 vampires dragged Pierre toward the holding cells, still laughing. Cassandra stepped forward, studying Sarah with new respect. The girl was right. If she hadn't noticed, she trailed off. "You have sharp eyes, child." "I've had practice," Sarah said quietly. "Marcus used to text his other women at dinner. Same tells." Lucian addressed the room. "This is why we fight. Not because Sarah is convenient, not because her blood is valuable. Because if we abandon Sanctuary, if we let fear turn us into traitors, We deserve to fall. Slowly, vampires began to nod. Not all of them, maybe half, but it was enough. The challenge is still coming, Cassandra said. 2 nights from now. This doesn't change that. I know, Lucian replied, his hand finding Sarah's shoulder. But now we know who our real enemies are. The attack came at 2 a.m, exactly 24 hours before the challenge. Sarah was in the restaurant Nocturne, helping Elena inventory blood supplies in the back room, when the front windows exploded inward. Not shattered, exploded, like someone had thrown grenades. Glass sprayed everywhere as gunfire erupted through the opening. Elena tackled her behind a steel counter as bullets tore through the dining room. But the sound was wrong. Sharper than normal gunfire, followed by screams from vampires in the front. Wooden bullets, Elena hissed, pulling out her modified gun. They came prepared. Through the chaos, Sarah heard Marcus's voice over a megaphone outside. Lucian Vale, this is the police. We have a warrant for your arrest. Send out Sarah Webb, and nobody else has to die. He brought hunters, Elena said, peering around the counter. I count at least 15. Half in police uniforms, half in tactical gear. Her face went pale. They have a purifier. What's a purifier? A weapon that burns vampire blood from the inside. If it hits you, you don't heal. You just burn until there's nothing left. More gunfire. More screams. Sarah smelled smoke and something metallic. Vampire blood. Then the temperature in the restaurant dropped 20 degrees in an instant. The lights went out. Every single one. In the darkness, she heard Marcus again, less confident now. Turn on your flashlights. Stay in formation. Beams of light cut through the black, searching. They found nothing. Then the screaming started. A hunter near the door fired into the shadows. His muzzle flash illuminated something. A shape, dark and liquid, moving along the walls like living smoke. His gun clicked empty. Before he could reload, the shadow wrapped around him and yanked him into the darkness. His scream cut off with a wet crunch. Open fire, Marcus yelled. Light it up! Gunfire erupted again, wooden bullets tearing through tables and walls. But Lucian wasn't there. He was everywhere and nowhere, a predator older than their grandparents', and he was done playing by rules. A hunter's flashlight beam caught him for just a moment. Lucian stood on the ceiling, defying gravity, his eyes pure silver, his smile showing fangs that seemed too long to be real. Then he dropped like a stone onto 2 hunters below, moving so fast he was just a blur of black suit and crimson spray. Fall back! Someone screamed. Hold the line, Marcus countermanded. He's just one. Lucien appeared behind Marcus, moving through shadows like they were doorways. His voice echoed from everywhere, layered and ancient. You came into my domain, broke my sanctuary, murdered my people. He moved closer, his presence suffocating. Did you truly think there would be no consequences? Marcus spun, firing his service weapon directly at Lucian's head. The bullet passed through shadow and hit the wall behind him. You're not bulletproof, Vale. Marcus's voice cracked with fear. You're just a... Lucian materialized inches from his face. Just a what, Officer Webb? Just a monster? His smile was terrible. You have no idea what monsters really are. He moved through the room like death itself. Hunters fired, but he was always somewhere else, behind them, above them, flowing through shadows that shouldn't exist. Elena joined the fight, her modified weapon taking down hunters who got too close. Other vampires emerged from hiding. Loyal members of Lucian's court, who'd been waiting. But it was Lucian who made the real statement. He caught the purifier, the weapon that burned vampire blood, and crushed it in his bare hand. The blessed silver seared his palm, smoke rising from his flesh. He didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to the hunters holding it and smiled. You want to know what true power looks like? Shadows erupted from him like a bomb blast, spreading across the restaurant, snuffing out every flashlight, every muzzle flash, every source of light. In the pure darkness, Sarah could only hear the wet sounds of combat, the screams, the pleading. When the lights flickered back on 3 minutes later, it was over. 15 hunters lay on the ground, some unconscious, some groaning, some very still. Marcus was pinned against the wall by shadows that had solidified into something like chains, his gun on the floor, his face sheet white. Lucian stood in the center of the restaurant, his suit torn, blood staining his clothes. His hand still smoked from the purifier burn. Behind him, a dozen vampires stood ready, eyes glowing, fangs bared. "I could kill you," Lucian said to Marcus, his voice soft now, which somehow made it worse. "But death would be mercy, and you don't deserve mercy." He stepped closer. "This is your doing. These men followed you here. They died because of you, because you couldn't let your wife go." The shadows released Marcus, who slumped to the floor. "The challenge is tomorrow night," Lucian continued. "Victor Blackwood wants to fight for her. Fine. But this?" He gestured to the carnage. "This ends now." He turned to the conscious hunters. "Go. Tell your families what happened here. Tell them the Vampire King showed restraint tonight, but that restraint has limits." The hunters scrambled to their feet, dragging their wounded with them. Marcus stumbled after them, casting one last look at Sarah, pure hatred burning in his eyes. The moment they were gone, Lucian finally sagged. Elena caught him, helping him to a chair. The burn on his hand was worse than Sarah had thought. Blackened flesh, silver poisoning spreading up his arm. "You're hurt," Sarah said, moving to him. "I'll heal." He looked at his ruined restaurant. Shattered windows, bullet holes, blood on every surface. "But they'll come at us differently now. Harder. You sent a message," Elena said quietly. "Both worlds now know Sanctuary stands." Lucian's gray eyes found Sarah's. "At what cost?" he whispered. The rooftop of Lucian's penthouse offered a view of the city just before dawn. Sarah found him there an hour after the attack, standing at the edge with his ruined hand wrapped in bandages soaked with something that smelled like herbs and old magic. The sky was turning gray. He'd have to go inside soon. "You should be resting," she said quietly. "So should you." He didn't turn around. "In 12 hours I fight Victor Blackwood for the right to keep protecting you. You should be as far from me as possible right now. And yet here I am." That earned her a glance. His gray eyes looked tired. Something she didn't think vampires could feel. "Why did you come up here, Sarah?" "Because you're hurt. Because 3 of your people died. Because an entire restaurant got destroyed." She moved closer. "Because you've sacrificed everything for someone you barely know. And I need to understand why." Lucian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. "I'm 473 years old. I've ruled the Eastern Territory for 2 centuries. I've made alliances, waged wars, survived countless challenges." He finally turned to face her. "Do you know what that kind of existence does to you?" Sarah shook her head. "It makes you forget what it feels like to be seen as anything other than a king, a weapon, a means to an end." His damaged hand clenched. "Every vampire in that chamber tonight sees me as power, as territory, as advantage." He paused. "You're the first person in centuries who looked at me and just saw someone who could help. You're more than a king to me," Sarah whispered. "I know. That's the problem." He moved closer, and despite the cold radiating from his skin, Sarah didn't step back. "When you sat at my table, terrified and desperate, you didn't ask what I could do for you politically. You didn't calculate advantage. You just asked for help, like I was—" He trailed off. "Human? A person," he corrected. "There's a difference." The first rays of sunlight touched the horizon. Lucian winced, his skin beginning to redden. "You need to go inside," Sarah said urgently. "In a moment." He studied her face like he was memorizing it. "If I lose tomorrow, you won't. If I lose," he continued firmly, "Victor Blackwood will claim you. He'll use your blood to strengthen his clan. You'll spend the rest of your life in a cage, and there's nothing I can do to stop it under vampire law. Then don't lose." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You make it sound simple, isn't it? You're the Vampire King. You're 473 years old. You just took down 15 hunters and made it look easy." Sarah surprised herself by reaching out, her hand hovering near his damaged one. "You're the most terrifying person I've ever met. And somehow, you're also the safest." Lucian's expression shifted to something vulnerable, almost shocked. "How can you say that?" "I'm a monster, Sarah. I kill. I've killed for centuries. Tonight alone. Tonight you protected me. You protected your people. You showed mercy when you didn't have to." She finally touched his hand, carefully avoiding the burn. "Marcus spent 3 years making me feel small. Worthless. Like I deserved every hit." Her voice cracked. "You've spent 3 days making me feel like I matter. Like I'm worth fighting for." The sunlight was getting stronger. Smoke began to rise from Lucian's exposed skin. "Go," Sarah said. "Before you burn." He didn't move. "When this is over, when I win, you'll have a choice. Stay under my protection, or I'll arrange safe passage anywhere in the world. New identity, new life. You'll never have to see me or this world again. And if I want to stay," something flickered in those ancient gray eyes. "Hope, maybe, or fear. Then you stay," he said simply. "As my ward, my guest, whatever you want to be." The sun crested the horizon fully. Lucian hissed in pain, his skin blistering. "Lucian, go." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Sarah, thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me what I'm fighting for." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness of the penthouse as dawn broke over the city. Sarah stood alone on the rooftop, watching the sunrise and thinking about a vampire king who'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as a person, and realizing she'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen as worth saving. 12 hours until the challenge. 12 hours until everything changed. The Covenant Chamber was carved into a mountain 3 hours north of the city. Sarah had never seen anything like it. A cathedral of stone and darkness, lit by torches that burned with blue flame. Hundreds of vampires filled the space, representing clans from across North America. Some looked modern in tailored suits. Others wore clothing from centuries past. All of them had come to witness the challenge, to witness her fate being decided. Lucian stood beside her on a raised platform, his hand still bandaged but his posture regal. He wore a black suit that made him look every inch the king he was. Elena flanked her other side, armed and alert. At the opposite end of the chamber, Victor Blackwood waited. He was tall and blonde, with the kind of beauty that seemed carved from ice. His smile was cruel, his eyes ancient and calculating. Beside him stood Marcus, looking small and human among the vampires. But his expression was triumphant. An elderly vampire stepped forward, the Covenant Arbiter, wearing robes that looked medieval. His voice echoed through the chamber. "We are gathered to witness a formal challenge. Victor Blackwood of the Blackwood clan contests Lucian Vale's invocation of sanctuary. On what grounds?" Lucian's voice was cold. Victor stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "On the grounds that Sarah Webb is not merely human. Her old blood makes her supernatural property under the Treaty of 1723. Therefore, sanctuary does not apply. She should be claimed by right of discovery." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "That treaty," Lucian said carefully, "pertains to vampires and other supernatural beings, not humans. She's not entirely human, though, is she?" Victor's smile widened. "Her bloodline traces back to the original families, humans who bore children with our kind before the Purge. That makes her a hybrid descendant. Supernatural by birth, even if dormant." He gestured to Sarah. "Her immunity to compulsion proves it. No pure human can resist our influence." Sarah's blood ran cold. She'd resisted compulsion naturally, but she'd assumed it was just luck. "You're reaching," Elena said. "Old blood doesn't make someone supernatural. Then let's test it." Victor's eyes gleamed. "Let the Covenant's blood oracle examine her. If she's purely human, sanctuary stands. If she carries even a trace of vampire essence in her lineage," he paused dramatically, "then she belongs to whoever can claim her. And I claim her now." The Arbiter looked troubled. "The blood oracle hasn't been invoked in 2 centuries. These are extraordinary circumstances," Victor pressed. 3 vampires are dead because of sanctuary being wrongly applied. The girl has destabilized 2 treaties and brought hunters to our doorstep. We deserve to know what she truly is." Cassandra stepped forward from the crowd. "If we allow this challenge, we set a precedent. Any vampire could claim any human with distant ancestry. Any vampire could, Victor agreed, if that human were valuable enough to risk war over. Tell me, Cassandra, why is Lucien so desperate to keep this one waitress? What makes her worth destroying centuries of peace? His voice dropped. Unless he knows something we don't. The chamber erupted in argument. Vampires shouted about precedent, about the treaty, about blood rights and ancient law. Sarah felt the walls closing in. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was evidence, proof. A legal loophole that Victor was exploiting to undermine everything. Enough! The arbiter's voice cracked like thunder. The challenge is valid under treaty law. We will invoke the blood oracle. He turned to Sarah, and she saw pity in his ancient eyes. Child, you will be examined. If you are human, you remain under sanctuary. If you carry vampire essence, you become contested property, and the challenge will proceed by combat. No. Lucien moved in front of Sarah, his power radiating through the chamber. I will not allow her to be subjected to— You don't have a choice, Victor said smoothly. Unless you forfeit. Admit sanctuary was wrongly invoked. Turn her over now, and we can avoid bloodshed. Lucian's jaw tightened. Never. Then the oracle decides. Victor's smile was victorious. Tomorrow night, at moonrise, we'll know what she truly is. And if I'm right, he looked directly at Sarah. You'll be mine, little hybrid. Every drop of that precious blood will strengthen my clan for centuries to come. Marcus stepped forward, speaking for the first time. And I get my wife back. You get what's left of her. Victor corrected coldly. The arbiter struck his staff against the stone floor 3 times. It is decided. Tomorrow at moonrise, the blood oracle will examine Sarah Webb. The covenant will witness. Prepare yourselves. As the assembly dispersed, Lucien turned to Sarah, his gray eyes dark with worry. I'm sorry. I didn't know they could use the treaty this way. What happens if the oracle finds vampire essence in me? Then Victor's challenge becomes a death match, Elena said quietly. Winner takes all, including you. Sarah looked across the chamber where Victor stood with Marcus, both of them watching her like she was prey. Then we make sure Lucien wins, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Because losing wasn't an option. Not anymore. The blood oracle was a vampire so ancient she looked like carved ivory. Her eyes were white, pupils long gone, but she saw everything. She stood in the center of the covenant chamber as hundreds of vampires watched in silence. Sarah's hand was cut, a small incision on her palm. 3 drops of blood fell into a silver bowl filled with water that glowed faintly blue. The oracle inhaled, and the liquid began to swirl. Old blood, she whispered, her voice like wind through dead leaves. 7th-generation descendant of the original bloodlines. Vampire essence runs in her veins, diluted but present. She is hybrid by ancestry. The chamber exploded with voices. Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her. The treaty applies, Victor said triumphantly. She's supernatural property. The challenge stands. The arbiter struck his staff. By ancient law, Sarah Webb is contested. Lucien Vale, Victor Blackwood, you will fight for the right to claim her, to the death or submission. No, Sarah said loudly. The chamber went quiet. I have something to say. Mortals don't speak in covenant proceedings, Victor sneered. Hybrids do, Cassandra corrected, stepping forward. If she has vampire essence, she has voice rights under the same treaty you're invoking, Victor. You can't have it both ways. Victor's jaw tightened. The arbiter nodded slowly. The Lady Cassandra is correct. Speak, child. Sarah's heart hammered, but she stepped forward. You're all arguing about treaties and blood rights, but you're ignoring the real crime here. She pointed at Victor. He armed human hunters. He gave them the location of Lucien's safe house. He helped Marcus kill 3 vampires during daylight. Lies, Victor said smoothly. You have no proof. Don't I? Sarah turned to the assembly. Pierre confessed before he was arrested. He had texts proving coordination with Blackwood. Those texts mentioned our agreement and territory once Vale falls. That's conspiracy. Pierre was a traitor who would say anything. And Marcus Webb, Sarah continued, her voice stronger now, has been meeting with Victor Blackwood for weeks. Elena has surveillance footage, phone records, financial transactions. She looked at the Arbiter. Victor didn't just challenge Sanctuary. He armed humans to murder vampires. Isn't that a violation of the Covenant's most sacred law? No vampire shall enable human violence against our kind? Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Vampires were nodding. The Treaty of 1842, Cassandra added, picking up Sarah's thread. Article 7. Any vampire who arms humans against their own kind forfeits all Covenant protections. She looked at Victor with cold satisfaction, which means this challenge is void. Victor Blackwood has no legal standing. Victor's composure cracked. This is absurd. You're going to take the word of a hybrid over mine? I'm taking the word of evidence, the Arbiter said. Elena of House Vale, present your proof. Elena stepped forward with a tablet, projecting images onto the chamber walls. Security footage of Marcus and Victor meeting. Bank transfers from Blackwood accounts to Hunter organizations. Text messages coordinating the attack on Nocturne. The evidence was damning. You wanted war, Lucian said quietly, moving to stand beside Sarah. You used Marcus Webb to destabilize my territory, armed hunters to kill my people, and then hid behind treaty law to claim Sarah as prize. His eyes glowed silver. But you made one mistake. What's that? Victor spat. You underestimated her. Lucienne's hand found Sarah's shoulder. She saw what we missed. She has 3 years of experience spotting liars and manipulators. You never stood a chance. The Arbiter's expression was grave. Victor Blackwood, you are charged with arming humans against vampire kind, conspiracy to murder, and treaty violation. How do you answer? Victor's mask finally fell. His face twisted with rage. She's still mine by right. Hybrid blood belongs to the strongest. No, the Arbiter said. Under Article 7, you have no rights. The challenge is void. He turned to Lucian. Sanctuary stands. Sarah Webb remains under your protection. This isn't over! Victor lunged, not at Lucian, but at Marcus, who stood frozen in shock. In one fluid motion, Victor's hand closed around Marcus's throat. You failed me, human. There was a sickening crack. Marcus's body crumpled to the floor, neck twisted at an unnatural angle. Sarah screamed. Now it's over, Victor said coldly, before vanishing into shadows. The chamber erupted into chaos. Vampires shouted, some chasing after Victor, others calling for order. Sarah couldn't look away from Marcus's body, the man who'd terrorized her for 3 years, dead in seconds. He's gone, Elena said quietly. Victor will be hunted. He's broken too many laws. The Arbiter approached Lucian. The Covenant rules in your favor. Sanctuary stands. The hybrid remains yours by law and by choice. Lucian looked at Sarah. Is that what you want? She thought about everything that had happened. The terror, the violence, the impossible choice between two monsters. Except Lucian wasn't a monster. Not to her. Yes, Sarah said. I choose Sanctuary. I choose you. Victor Blackwood didn't get far. The Covenant's enforcers, ancient vampires who answered only to the Arbiter, cornered him at the chamber's northern exit. He fought like a demon, taking down 2 of them before Lucian arrived. Sarah watched from the platform as Lucian moved through the shadows, appearing behind Victor with terrifying speed. Their collision shook the stone walls. 2 vampire kings, centuries old, fighting with a violence that seemed to warp reality itself. You broke our most sacred law, Lucian said, his voice echoing through the chamber. You armed humans against your own kind. You murdered vampires in their sleep. And for what? Territory? Power? For evolution, Victor snarled, his face transforming into something monstrous. Fangs extending, eyes going completely black. You've made us weak, Lucian. Hiding in shadows, playing by human rules, protecting mortals instead of feeding on them. He lunged, claws extended. We should rule them, not serve them. Lucian caught his wrist mid-strike. We don't serve humans. We coexist. Because the alternative is extinction. Then let us go extinct as kings, not cowards. The fight was brutal. Victor was strong, ancient, desperate. But Lucian was something else. A vampire who'd survived centuries of challenges, who'd learned to balance power with wisdom. He moved like water, redirecting Victor's rage, using his momentum against him. Finally, Lucian had Victor pinned against the stone wall, his hand around the other vampire's throat. "Any last words?" Lucienne asked quietly. Victor laughed, blood on his teeth. "She'll never be safe. Every vampire who knows about her blood will come for her. You can't protect her forever." "Watch me." Lucian's hand moved faster than Sarah could track. There was a sound like tearing silk, and then Victor Blackwood, second of the Blackwood clan, 400 years old, crumbled to ash. The chamber fell silent. The arbiter approached, his ancient face grave. "Bring forward Victor's conspirators." 4 vampires were dragged into the center, including Pierre, who'd been feeding information to Blackwood. They looked terrified. "You aided in arming humans against your kind," the arbiter said. "You conspired to overthrow a sitting king. You violated the Covenant's most sacred laws." He turned to Lucian. "As the injured party, the sentence is yours to decide." Sarah expected Lucian to kill them. After everything they'd done, it would have been justified. Instead, he said, "Exile. Strip them of their territory, their titles, their clan affiliations. They are to leave the Eastern Territory and never return. If they do, the sentence becomes death. Mercy." Even after everything, he chose mercy. The arbiter nodded slowly. "So it shall be." He turned to the assembly. "Let it be known, Sanctuary stands. Sarah Webb, hybrid of the 7th generation, remains under the protection of Lucian Vale by law and by covenant decree. Any vampire who threatens her answers to this council." Cassandra stepped forward. "And the Blackwood clan will need new leadership," the arbiter said. "Lucian Vale as victor, you may claim their territory or appoint a successor." "I appoint Lady Cassandra," Lucian said immediately. "She's proven her wisdom and neutrality throughout this crisis." Cassandra's eyes widened in surprise. Then she bowed. "I accept, and I pledge the Blackwood territory will honor sanctuary law." One by one, other clan leaders stepped forward, pledging the same. What had started as Sarah's desperate plea for help had become something larger, a reaffirmation of the laws that kept vampire society from descending into chaos. As the assembly dispersed, Elena approached Sarah. "You did it. You actually changed vampire politics." "I just didn't want to die," Sarah said quietly. "You did more than survive. You reminded us what we're supposed to be." Elena smiled. "Welcome to the court, Sarah Webb." Sarah looked at Lucian, who stood among clan leaders, discussing territory and treaties. He glanced back at her, and despite everything, the violence, the death, the impossible circumstances, he smiled. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah felt safe. For the first time in centuries, Lucienne felt less alone. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the newly renovated Nocturne, watching vampires and a select few humans dine together under the amber chandeliers. The restaurant had been rebuilt. Stronger, more beautiful. A symbol of what Lucian called the new era, an era she'd helped create. "You're staring again," Elena said, appearing beside her with 2 wine glasses. "Still can't believe this is your life." Sarah accepted the glass. "Regular wine, not blood. Sometimes I wake up thinking I'm still in that apartment with Marcus and this is all a dream. Nightmares don't usually end with you becoming the most influential human in vampire politics." Elena clinked their glasses together. "You changed everything, you know. Sanctuary law has been invoked 12 times since the Covenant ruling. 12 humans found protection because you proved it works." Sarah hadn't known that. The weight of it settled on her shoulders. Not heavy, but significant. Lucian emerged from his office, and as always, every vampire in the room tracked his movement. But his eyes found only her. 3 months hadn't diminished whatever this was between them. If anything, it had grown stronger. "The council wants to make you an official liaison," he said, joining them. "A voice for humans in vampire territory. You'd have a seat at negotiations, legal protection, a salary." He paused. You'd be the first in 500 years. That's terrifying, Sarah admitted. You exposed a conspiracy, outsmarted a vampire king, and changed covenant law. Lucian's smile was warm. I think you can handle a council position. Elena excused herself tactfully, leaving them alone. I never asked to be any of this, Sarah said quietly. I just wanted to escape. I know. Lucien moved closer, his presence still sending chills down her spine. But the good kind now. You can still leave. I meant what I said. New identity, new life, anywhere you want. You've earned your freedom. Is that what you want? What I want, he said carefully, is for you to choose what makes you happy. Not what's safe, not what's expected. What you actually want. Sarah looked around the restaurant, at Elena laughing with other vampires, at the mixed crowd coexisting peacefully, at the world she'd stumbled into by accident. She thought about the terrified waitress who'd fled into the rain 3 months ago, and the person she'd become. I spent 3 years being told I was worthless, she said. That I was lucky Marcus put up with me. That I deserved what I got. She met Lucian's gray eyes. You've spent 3 months showing me I was wrong. That I'm strong. That I matter. You do matter. I want to stay. The words came easier than she expected. Not because I'm afraid to leave. Not because I owe you. But because for the first time in my life, I feel like I belong somewhere. She smiled. Even if that somewhere is a vampire's court. Something shifted in Lucian's expression. Relief. Joy. Vulnerability. You're sure? I'm sure. He took her hand, careful of his unnatural strength. Then welcome home, Sarah Webb. Officially. The restaurant erupted in applause. Sarah realized the entire room had been listening, waiting. Vampires raised their glasses. A formal acknowledgement. Elena whooped from the bar. They were listening the whole time? Sarah whispered, mortified. Of course. You're going to have to get used to vampire hearing. Lucian's smile was genuinely amused. Privacy is mostly a myth here. Cassandra entered then, regal in a deep purple dress. I heard there's a new court member to welcome. News travels fast, Sarah said. News about you always does. Cassandra's expression was approving. You've done well, little hybrid. Better than any of us expected. Over the next hour, vampires approached to formally acknowledge her position. Some were warm, others merely polite, but all showed respect. She was no longer just the waitress who'd stumbled into their world. She was part of it. Later, as the restaurant quieted, Lucian walked Sarah to the rooftop where they'd first talked before dawn. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like stars. I never thanked you properly, Sarah said. For what? For seeing me. For protecting me. For giving me a choice when no one else ever did. Lucien was quiet for a moment. You thanked me the moment you chose to stay. For 473 years, I've been a king, a weapon, a political entity. You're the first person who made me feel like just... Lucian. Sarah leaned against him, no longer afraid of his cold skin or inhuman nature. So, what happens now? Now? He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Now we rebuild. We strengthen alliances. We teach other territories that coexistence is possible. He looked down at her. And we figure out what this is between us. This? Whatever it is that makes a vampire king risk everything for a waitress. His smile was soft. Whatever makes that waitress choose immortal politics over a quiet life. Sarah's heart hammered. That sounds complicated. Impossibly so. Good, she said. I'm tired of simple. Below them, the city continued its endless rhythm. Humans going about their lives, unaware of the vampires that walked among them. Unaware that a terrified woman's desperate plea had changed centuries of supernatural law. Sarah Webb had walked into a restaurant full of monsters and found something unexpected. Purpose, strength, and the possibility of love with someone who'd lived for centuries but had never truly felt seen. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she fled Marcus that rainy night. It was better.